Welcome to the shop. Today we're making rolling pins. Now rolling pins are made on wood lathes. It's such a fun tool. We're going to get into some turning tips, some equipment. We're going to do all of that today. Hopefully you walk away knowing how to turn a rolling pin. All right, we got our blank all milled up. Now there's still some rough sides. That's totally fine because we'll end up turning it all off on the lathe. It ended up being about 1 7/8 by 1 7/8. Then we found center. You're going to need to find center on both sides because we're going to be doing some turning, which is called in between centers. There's something that goes here, something that goes here, and then it turns like that. So you need it to be balanced. So you get you a combination square, set it roughly to the center, and then you can measure out, do on each 4 sides, and it leaves you this real pretty square in the middle, which you grab a nail punch, boom, knock you a hole, ready to go on the lathe. Blank, ready to go. All right, our blank is all mounted in the lathe, ready to go. We're ready to turn. Step 1, we gotta rough it out. So it's still a squared piece of wood. We gotta turn it to be cylindrical. So we're gonna rough it down to that with something called a roughing gouge. How original, right? So this is the big bad boy. This guy's like 2 inches. You don't need that. You could do something like a 1-inch roughing gouge. I don't know if they make them smaller than 1 inch. This is just very efficient, so I love it. So let's get to turning. All right, here's lesson number 1. So on this gouge, and there's a bevel, and then this is your cutting edge. So what you want to do is ride this bevel and slowly come up, and then when you start cutting, you'll just go a hair more, and that's where you want to be. So like right here, we're not cutting. Not cutting, not cutting, not cutting, not cutting. Now we're starting to cut. All right, so our blank has been roughed out. Now, it is a little rough. There are some high spots and low spots when you run your hand on it. There's a little bit of tear out here, but we can fix all that. We're not done. We will then grab this tool called a caliper, and we're gonna look for the thinnest part. And then it's about right here. And so we're gonna take that measurement. We're gonna use this tool called a parting tool, and we're gonna turn down to get that thickness every couple inches. So then after we've got this thing marked all out, we can get our roughing gouge again and just connect the dots and get a perfectly straight rolling pin. Our piece is all flat and true, relatively. Now it's to turn towards our ends. Now I'm not gonna make like handle. I've drawn out just like a decorative end. And I turned something like this 6 or 7 years ago for a Christmas present, and I always remembered that it was like so classy looking. So We're trying to do that. It's just a flat spot and then like a bulb that almost looks like a Christmas tree bulb, Christmas light. We're gonna do one side and then try to replicate the other side. That's where it gets harder. For our detail work, we're mainly going to be using a bowl gouge, maybe a spindle gouge, but it's the same idea as before with the roughing gouge. You have this bevel, you'll be riding that bevel, come up until you start cutting. Okay, so I want to show you two angles of how I'm doing this. So first, I'm taking this bevel edge. My bevel is going to be riding along this groove as much as I can get it. I'm not riding it like this. I'm closing it off and riding it downhill like this. I would never want to go uphill like that, or it will catch this unsupported edge and pull down, and then you'll get a catch. So you always want to turn downhill. So you have to worry about how your bevel is riding here. And so if you just go straight across and down, you're going to be losing your bevel support the farther you go over because it's a curve. So what you have to do is you're going to be cutting, and then this right hand will slowly come, and so it'll be kind of straight on when I'm to the flat area. So right here, we're almost 45 degrees as we start our cut. And then as we come to the middle part, I'm almost straight on. Okay, this is as far as we can go on the right side of our rolling pin, because if we keep turning, it'll get to be a little bit unstable. There'll be more vibrations the thinner you turn it, and that'll make it harder for us to replicate on the left side. And for us to replicate it, we're going to be using a story stick. So the way to use a story stick is you want to mark the major design features on this one side, and then you can take this story stick and go mark them on your blank on the other side, so you know where you're turning to. You can also use these marks and measure with the caliper so that you can know how thin and thick these features need to be. So as we turn this last little piece, we're going to use a new tool. It's called the skew chisel. Now this is the most intimidating tool in turning. It is a high risk, high reward tool in the sense that if it catches, it could really damage your piece. So it's the same as before. You're going to ride it on your bevel. You're going to turn it 45 degrees and cut that way. Here's the thing. You have to stay at this bottom third of the chisel. If you don't, if you go too high, because you're turning and riding this bevel and you go too high, it's going to catch and pull into the piece. It'll damage your piece. No good. No one wants that. It's a hard tool to learn, and there's a lot of skill and angles that you really got to pay attention to. I really like this video on YouTube called Understanding Catches by Richard Raffin. I think it's Fine Woodworking. I'll put it in the link below. If you want to learn how to use a skew chisel, honestly any chisel, I would check that video out. He's really dives in deep to understanding what you're doing wrong and turning. Let's hope we don't screw it up with this guy. Okay, this is how far I'm gonna go on this side. I'm gonna go ahead and sand the whole thing, and then we'll get real sketchy with getting super thin on these guys. When you turn real thin on the lathe, you're playing with fire. We got a little burnt. And unfortunately, the camera wasn't rolling when we got burned. So this guy was a little thicker than this guy, and I wanted to cut it on the miter saw. So I was just gonna turn this down a little bit, and then we were done. It was something I was just gonna do off camera. Well, as I was doing that, I think the vibration just got a little too much, and on this side, popped off. Ugh. But one, still looks good. There's a little bit of chip out in there. We will fix that. We will sand this. It's probably gonna look almost exactly like this when it's done. We'll make the second side to match. We got a little spicy, but we can handle the heat, you know? So let's finish this thing out. Before we get to those final shots, if you like this kind of stuff, I'd love it if you subscribed, like the video, you know the spill. Thanks for watching. See you next time. I have a few of these available for purchase. If you're interested, the link is below.